What is up, brothers, jacks, and dudes? It's Brian Zane with another classic pay-per-view review. I hope you've been having fun with your family and friends as Hulkamania rolls on.
I wanna be a Hulkamaniac. Have fun with my family and friends.
This month with the reviews, I wanted to take a look at this particular window in Hulk Hogan's career, taking a look at that meteoric comeback run that he had in WWE in 2002. Of course, he and the rest of the NWO debuted in February. Wrestlemania 18 happens, and the reaction for he and The Rock's match is completely off the rails, very unexpected, and WWE is making a hard pivot in their creative plans to try and capture lightning in a bottle and capitalize on this big Hulk Hogan nostalgia rush. We'll see how that turns out with Backlash 2002 from April 21st at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. This show was nominated by Jonathan Cruz over on patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. It's a very notable pay-per-view for a few reasons, one of which being it's the final pay-per-view under the WWF banner. Pretty soon after this, the company is going to change its name to WWE, and the rest is history. And we'll talk more about that once that actually happens in the timeline. But also it's a very important pay-per-view because it's the first one to take place after the first ever brand split. After WrestleMania 18, they decided this roster's way too big, we got to cut it in half, and so they split the roster amongst Raw and SmackDown, giving them two distinctly different rosters with floating champions to go back and forth between the two different shows. They had the draft a few weeks before this with Vince McMahon in charge of SmackDown, Ric Flair in charge of Raw, and some interesting decisions were made. Some very popular tag teams were broken up as a result of this, namely the Dudley Boys and the APA. And actually, it's interesting because Raw, way more than SmackDown early in the brand split, was way more experimental with the people they were pushing at that time. You saw like Bubba Ray Dudley get a really fast singles push out the gate as hardcore champion. You had Bradshaw mixing it up with the NWO and fighting alongside Steve Austin. So they're definitely taking a lot more chances on newer people or people who aren't as familiar with the top scene on Raw. The brand split also gave us the new look and sound for Raw, that new theme song, "Get the drugs, the body, move to the music, play that music." I hated that song by the end. They used it for way too long. Some of y'all have an attachment to that song, but for me, thorn in your eye is where it's at. The biggest thing to come out of WrestleMania, besides Triple H winning the title at long last, was the babyface turn of Hulk Hogan. The company pivoted after what happened at Mania. They had him leave the NWO. He went back to being the red and the yellow, and the fans were really into this comeback. And truth be told, so was I. Because remember, I wasn't watching wrestling until 1998. I had completely missed the first wave of Hulkamania in the 80s and his prime then. And my only real knowledge of Hogan in 98 was, what the internet was saying. Largely negative opinions on him. And well, his matches in WCW lately haven't been all that great. So I had a real negative view of Hogan at that time. And it wasn't until he went to the WWF and then Mania happened and that whole nostalgic push happened for him, and they were able to tell that story of his being there and then he's been gone and coming back and the fans accepting him, that really got me into Hogan and really led me to appreciate him as a performer. I would go back and watch those matches that I hadn't seen it all before, and I developed a real appreciation for him as someone who could connect with the audience and really just kind of dial it up and just really turn it on as a wrestler. And it really made me gain a respect for Hogan in that way. I was definitely kind of a late stage Hulkamaniac, a late bloomer, as it were. I was definitely wrapped up in it for a little while at that point because it was something I didn't experience when I was younger. And so to see it, kind of a glimpse of it, kind of them bringing it back a little bit at this point, for me it was really fun to see. But will it actually be good? Let's find out as we dive into this show, which is just speckled with forcible entry references, that of course being the new rock album the company came out with at the time, like a lot of popular rock bands doing versions of WWF themes that were later used for like different entrance themes or used in hype packages and whatnot. And I actually owned this album. I still actually have the CD somewhere buried in my collection. One of these days I will review Forcible Entry. One of these days. 12,489 folks in attendance, 400,000 pay-per-view buys. It's up from 375K the previous year. Maybe some of that Hogan effect there. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler are on commentary, and the opening hype package really focuses on that main event, Hulk Hogan versus Triple H for the championship. And I love that it's narrated by the two wrestlers, and they're both telling their stories, and everything's very dramatic. And I just love how in Hogan's narration, he talks about how crazy that match was, and he has to just get this little mention in, oh, The Rock became a purebred Hulkamaniac after that, brother, when The Rock's never mentioned again in this video package. And Triple H is like, I'm honored to be in the ring with him, but I'm also a little bit sad. Oh, that killed me. The scythes, those big swinging scythes, they swing to and fro on the set. God, that was cool. Your opening matchup for the Cruiserweight title as Billy Kidman defends against Tajiri with his girlfriend, Tori Wilson. These two have been feuding over the championship the last couple of months, trading it back and forth, and Tajiri's become a real bad boyfriend because now he's getting all mean and disrespectful to Tori, who they started dating during the Alliance and the Invasion storyline, but ooh, Tajiri's gone mean, and now he's making Tori dress like a geisha. There's fast action at the onset. Tajiri blocking a Hurricane Rana, tries to slingshot Kidman, but he's very agile and turns it into a crossbody. Tajiri dropping Kidman chest first onto the barricade to take over. I love those big kicks by Tajiri. No one in wrestling has as cool a kicks as him, in my opinion. And speaking of kicks, I love that drop kick into the Tree of Woe. You know that Tajiri is a full-blown heel now, by the way, because Lawler's just spending the entire match complaining, oh, we can't see the puppies. Hey, is it me or is the padding on the floor extra shiny tonight, by the way? The champ starts fighting back but gets caught in the tarantula. Tajiri goes for the handspring elbow, but Billy cuts him off. More big kicks, but then Tajiri forgets you don't powerbomb Kidman. The champ goes for the shooting star press, gets none of it. He's a sitting duck for the buzzsaw kick, but Kidman kicks out. The crowd is chanting for the champ. He comes back with his big sit-out powerbomb off the top, but now it seems you don't powerbomb Tajiri either. He sprays the red mist into Kidman's eyes and covers to win and regain the title. Then after the match, Michael Cole interviews him at ringside, asking about his change of heart as of late, and Tajiri responds in Japanese. So there you go. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. I thought it was a really fun opener. I thought it could have gone a little bit longer, but I liked what they did with the time they had. I think they have really good chemistry due to Tajiri and Kidman, and any match you watch with Tajiri, those kicks with the sound, oh man, that's why he wears the baggy pleather pants. It's for maximum leg slappage when he hits those kicks. It's brilliant. But yeah, really fun opener. Backstage, Bradshaw and Farouk reunite for the first time since the draft split them up. Welp, the NWO's music's playing. Gotta go. Well, times are very interesting for the New World Order right now in WWE. They came in February with all this fanfare. Oh my God, these 3 big names back in WWF for the first time in so many years. This is crazy stuff. And then within 2 months, it all starts to fall apart because the Hogan train is leaving the station and leaving Nash and Hall behind. So then they lose Hulk Hogan, but don't worry because they got in exchange X-Pac. Hooray! And then in the midst of all that, they beat up Kane, and X-Pac steals Kane's mask and wears it around all the time now. And it's funny because you see him with the mask, he looks like some weird random, like a badly put together created wrestler where like the head doesn't fit the rest of the wrestler's body, or he looks like Kane sat in the dryer for too long. And then, to make matters more worse for the NWO, Kevin Nash suffers a biceps tear and he's out. So right now, it's just Razor Ramon and the Kid back in action, X-Pac and Scott Hall. And here, the bad guys taking on Bradshaw. Like I mentioned, he's one of the first beneficiaries of the brand split, giving him that nice little singles push. Bradshaw's cornered by both Hall and X-Pac until Farouk comes out to help even the odds. We get this big APA chant. Good to see them back. Bradshaw's off to a good start here. He gets those clubbing blows and a DDT to Hall. Scott bumps into Farouk on the outside, very slowly turns around, and he takes some hits from him. Is this in front of the referee, by the way, or what? Hall with an eye poke that allows him to take over. They're trading more strikes as JR says the match is resembling a bowling shoe. Bradshaw with the clothesline from hell, but X-Pac putting his foot on the ropes. Farouk chasing Kid down. He slams him into the ring post, but Hall hits Bradshaw with a low blow and rolls him up up to win because he ain't hitting the outsider's edge on that guy. I give it 1 star out of 5. It's a quick, dirty little match that is supposed to give the NWO some sign of life at this point in their arc. What a fall they've had since being introduced as the lethal injection of poison into the WWF, and now it's this. And it's not going to get much better because pretty soon after this is the plane ride from hell, and that is going to be the end of Scott Hall's time in the WWF. So it's not going to get much better for the NWO from here.
Don't forget the big show!
We go backstage to see Vince McMahon entering the office of Ric Flair at his big old desk with Arn Anderson looking on, as one does. Vince says he's starting to like Ric's style. He says, finally you understand that these wrestlers are big jerks for employees who don't trust or appreciate us owners. He says, I'm beginning to relate to you. And then Flair snaps back and says, you can't relate to me and you never will. I'll never be like Vince McMahon. And then Vince wraps it up by saying, well, maybe not, but you can try. And I'm like, is that meant to be a challenge? Up next for the Women's Championship, it's Jazz taking on Trish Stratus. These two have really been going after each other as of late. Trish gave Jazz a black eye a few weeks ago, and Jazz responded by decking her with the title belt mid-Stratus-faction on the outside. Also involved in this storyline, the returning Molly Holly. She is no longer Hurrah brainwashed by the Hurricane, no longer Mighty Molly. She has returned as a version of herself, and the whole storyline is she believes herself to be pure and wholesome and virtuous, more so than any of the other ladies in the WWF because she's a virgin. And that's the storyline they give her going forth. And it's actually apparently true to life, but also they're using that as a way to make her a bad guy. So Molly comes out to interrupt the proceedings. She is the one that Trish beat last week to become #1 contender, by the way. Molly says these people don't want their champion to be a cheater, to flaunt her body around. They want their champion to be pure and wholesome, like me. You know what happens to cheaters? Bam! Shot to the face. So now they're fighting when Jazz shows up, makes her entrance, and picks up where Molly left off. Trish is able to hold her own in this match, takes the champ down with a chick kick early on. She's on a roll until Jazz cuts her off and hits this powerbomb. Trish starts coming back, goes for Stratusfaction, but Jazz stops it and just slams her down. Interesting line from JR where he says, this is a Boston Crab that not even lotion is going to make better. What context are you talking about lotion here? You talking about like, ooh, lotion on the ladies because they're ladies, or like lotion for crabs? Jazz turns it into an STF. Trish fights it for a second but taps out for Jazz to win and retain. New interview guy comes to talk to Jazz afterward. He asks some questions, but Jazz isn't saying a thing. I give it 2 stars out of 5. At this point, Trish is still on the upswing. She's not where she's going to be yet, but she is getting better, and you can see that improvement just from the stuff I was reviewing in late 2001 compared to where we are now. And I think that Trish is pretty well protected here, you know, getting beat up a little bit by Molly beforehand to protect her from losing and tapping out clean, essentially. Jazz does seem like the lesser of the 3 parties in this angle when you think about it. It's really more about Trish and Molly at this point than it is about Jazz, but nevertheless, it's a solid match. History made on this show as it's Brock Lesnar's first official match taking on Jeff Hardy. Brock Lesnar famously debuted on screen the night after WrestleMania 18, and he'd been on a tear ever since, showing up on Raw and SmackDown, pulverizing people, throwing big guys hither and yon. And man, when I first saw Lesnar invade the TV screen, I was just entranced by this freak of nature, this giant individual, this crazy combination of size and strength and agility and intensity. Unlike anything I'd ever seen before at that point as a fan. Like Goldberg is the thing that comes the closest to it, but even Lesnar felt different and more mysterious, I guess, in a way, especially being accompanied by a returning Paul Heyman, who we hadn't seen since the Monday after Survivor Series. He comes in here with Brock Lesnar. It's the partnership that's going to really define both of these men for decades after the fact. And yeah, I love this version of Lesnar. Rookie Brock Lesnar, the next big thing. Give me more of that, please. I mean, when he starts fighting the Hardys a few weeks after his debut, we get that moment where Matt Hardy just tees off on Lesnar with that steel chair. 2 shots right in the face, and the smack and the way Lesnar no-sells it is just, I mean, it's shocking to to see something like that for the first time. That level of just not registering something that crazy and violent looking. And like, yeah, that put a hold on me for life. I think that more than anything turned me into a huge Lesnar fan, was the way that stuff went down. Also lately, Paul Heyman's been acting skeezy toward Lita, going through her things, handling her thongs. He makes some improper comments toward her, and she slaps him for it. And then that same night on Raw, Lesnar obliterates Matt on the stage. We're back live, and we go to the locker room. Heyman's pumping Lesnar up and telling him to destroy Jeff Hardy, and he wants to remind him this is all Lita's fault and wants everyone to know that the next big thing is Brock Lesnar. Jeff making his way to the ring, accompanied by Lita, and he's covered in the glow paint, but how come he's not wearing any merch of his own? By the way, Brock Lesnar's first theme is not nearly as iconic as the one he would be later known for. Hardy's trying to stick and move and fly around to attack, hitting a top rope crossbody at one point, but then Lesnar catches him and really turns it on. Just total power on display as he suplexes Jeff, breaks his back over his knee like so, all while Heyman is screaming at Lita that it's her fault. Jeff makes this big comeback, hits the Whisper in the Wind, the low blow leg drop. He hits the Swanton, but Lesnar kicks out and Jeff looks completely shocked. He grabs a chair, but Lesnar cuts him off and I think hits the F5 on it. Maybe, I don't know if it matters. Heyman screaming at Lesnar to keep hurting his opponent. We get multiple power bombs. He hits a running power bomb, looks absolutely brutal, and that is enough for referee Teddy Long to call the match playa because Lesnar wins. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars out of 5. I mean, it's a squash match, but God, what an impactful first match this is. This is the official beginning of the Brock Lesnar era in WWE. You know, the guy who would come to define the main event scene on and off for the next decade or so. So yeah, it's an incredible debut. Jeff does an amazing job bumping his ass off and selling like death for Lesnar, and Lesnar looks strong as hell. I mean, yeah, you really can't ask for a better debut for a guy like this. And it's crazy because you've seen so many other examples of wrestlers in that mold of Lesnar, people who've come after him, or maybe sometimes even before him, who've had that same kind of introduction where there's this big beast and they kill everyone for a while and then it just peters out. But that did not happen with Lesnar. He was very unique at this time, and I feel so many times they would try to replicate what they had in Lesnar, and they've never really been able to find somebody quite like him. On we go now to a renewed rivalry formed in the fallout of the brand split as Kurt Angle takes on, my Durango. I'm talking about Edge. Edge is really being positioned on SmackDown as the future of the company, the future of SmackDown, really up-and-coming single star in the wake of everything that happened during the Invasion storyline. Edge has beaten Angle in a match as of late, and Angle and Edge costing each other matches. During this build, we had that classic Wayne's World gag where Edge had Angle hold up these pictures where he's, making fun of himself with the captions there. It's also the feud that really began the trend of fans chanting, "You suck," during Kurt's music, because Edge literally eggs him on to do it one time on SmackDown. Edge looks strong at first, but Kurt cuts him off with some stomps, big old German suplex. He keeps working over Edge for several minutes. They're talking an awful lot throughout the course of this match about both men's hair, and it's never really come up before, and I'm they've got to be planting seeds at this point for the hair match they're going to be doing the following month on pay-per-view, but I'm it's so interesting they both mention Kurt's hair never is really brought up at this point. It just seems very coincidental. Angle with another German, Edge hitting a suplex of his own. He gets off a lot of offense, but Kurt just keeps kicking out. Going up top, Kurt catches him and hits a big suplex from there. They're trading more throws. Kurt landing real high on one of them, then gets dumped to the outside. Edge with this huge dive on top of him, follows up with this nice missile drop kick. Still not enough though. Edge kicks out of the Angle slam. Kurt drops the straps. He gets the ankle lock in there. Edge nearly catching him with a surprise roll up though. Angle's now procured a chair, but he dinks himself. Edge hitting his O-matic, but Kurt barely kicks out. Edge now going for the spear, but Kurt punts him. Another Angle slam. That one does it. Angle wins. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. This was my favorite match of the evening. It was a lot of fun seeing the present and future of wrestling really putting on a great showing there. And it was a great display for Edge, a great test for him as he's trying to, again, make his way up and prove himself as the up-and-coming star he's being billed as. And Kurt can work well with just about anybody, and these two have worked together like in the developmental system together, and they're putting on great stuff now on the bigger stage. You love to see it, and this would not be the end of their rivalry by any means. But yeah, I loved watching these guys at this point. I was really a big growing Edge head at this time. I was already a big fan of Edge when he was teaming with Christian in 2000. And so seeing Edge doing this well for me as a fan of that time was very cool to see. Out comes Chris Jericho, the former Undisputed Champion and one half of last month's Wrestlemania main event, and he's not booked for a match. This is some bullshit. Jericho has a microphone though. He says he's tired of being referred to as a has-been. It's really cheesed him off, and he's just mad that he's not booked. I'm not good enough to wrestle at Backlash? And he says Trish Stratus had a match. Billy Kidman had a match. Even Maven's got a match tonight. Like, way to bury the hell out of Maven. So he's very offended by this, and he says, you people in this hick town of Kansas City don't even deserve me. Screw you guys, I'm going home, hit my music. And that was it. Like, Jericho just got to bitch for like 2 minutes about how he wasn't booked on the show. And that's all he did. Like, no one came out to interrupt him. He didn't say, I'm going to challenge the winner of like the next match or whatever. He just said, like, oh, I'm better than Hogan. Bye. And man, I was infuriated watching this because I'm like, is that all they're going to do with him? He's going to come out to acknowledge the fact that he's not booked? Like, oh man, brutal. We join Flair in his office again. He's in his referee attire, ready to rock. In walks the Undertaker, the guy he just fought at WrestleMania. He gives him a mean look as they get ready for their match later on. But up next for the Intercontinental Championship, Rob Van Dam defends against a returning Eddie Guerrero. That's right, Latino Heat Eddie Guerrero is back in the company. He was off TV starting in the spring to go to rehab, but then later in the year, around the fall, he got a DUI and was let go from the company. So he had this real brief window of time in the independents, most notably in IWA Mid-South against a young CM Punk and an unmasked Rey Mysterio in a triple threat match for the ages. And then he gets brought back the day after Mania 18, immediately getting into it with Rob Van Dam. He cost him a match against The Undertaker at one point, arguing with him over who has the better frog splash. But yeah, I was excited to see Eddie back in the company. I was bummed that things happened the way they did in 2001 and he was let go, but for him to come back so soon and be fast-tracked into this really prominent program with RVD, I thought was really cool to see. A lot of quick backy-forthy to start things off. Big kick combinations by the champion here. I like that snap float-over suplex he does too. A superplex attempt is escaped. We get a super guillotine over the top rope. Van Dam's coming back, hits a flying kick and just goes, yeah! Yeah! More of the big hits by Van Dam, that spinning leg drop over the barricade. Eddie fights back, nice surfboard action into that dragon sleeper hold, very cool. Van Dam fights out of the gory stretch, but Guerrero's still on him. We get some early shades of the Three Amigos with those consecutive suplexes he does. They're fighting on the top rope, nice sunset flip powerbomb by Guerrero. At one point, Eddie powders and he grabs the title belt. He and Van Dam get into this tug of war, leaving Tim White laying. Poor Tim. Guerrero with a neck breaker on the belt follows up with the frog splash. Eddie Guerrero wins and is the new Intercontinental Champion. Back at ringside, Jim Ross is gushing about the opening weekend for The Rock's new movie, The Scorpion King. He says it's the highest grossing movie opening in the month of April in the history of cinema at about $35 million. It would get beat 1 year later by Anger Management, which is the movie starring Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson. And as of right now, I just looked at the list before recording this. Right now, The Scorpion King has like the 23rd biggest opening weekend in the month of April all time. currently at number 1 is Avengers Endgame, and I don't think anyone's going to beat that anytime soon. And speaking of number 1, it's time for a number 1 contendership match as The Undertaker takes on Stone Cold Steve Austin with Raw owner Ric Flair as the special guest referee. So in the fallout from the draft, well, first of all, Flair drafted The Undertaker very high for Raw. The logic was always weird because they had just fought at WrestleMania, and I guess the logic there was, well, Flair holds The Undertaker in high regard because he beat him up, but that's come back to bite him in the ass because Taker still doesn't like Flair by any stretch. And then because Austin took some time off after WrestleMania, he wasn't part of that initial draft round. They were like, oh, due to a stipulation in his contract for this thing that did not exist before we signed the contract, like Austin is going to be a free agent and will eventually choose one show or the other. And so Flair successfully drafts Austin to Raw, but then right away Austin hits Flair with a stunner to prove that he's not, going to be a corporate suck-up or whatever. So at one point during this build, Flair announces The Undertaker is going to be the new number 1 contender for the championship, but it wasn't his turn. It was Vince McMahon's turn to name one for SmackDown. So The Undertaker's pissed that he had that title match taken away from him. Austin also wants to be number 1 contender, and so Flair decides, well, let's put you two in a match to see who's number 1 contender. And since you guys have both been beating me up, it only makes sense that I'll be the guest referee too for some reason. I feel like Flair is pretty justified in being pissed at Austin, though. He's tried helping the guy out a couple of times. That mean old rattlesnake keeps hitting him with the stunner. Flair, by the way, wearing his red boots while he's refereeing. Shades of Johnny Red Shoes Dugan or Red Shoes Uno in New Japan. I tell you what, 2002 Austin is such a weird, uncanny valley for me. Like everything after Survivor Series until his walkout later this year is just like, what a weird blip. What a weird period this is where Austin is just mad at his creative direction. He's just kind of in this weird shuffle right now because his body's getting broken down. He hates creative, and he's just on the verge of this walkout. He's dealing with really subpar, I guess according to him, kind of matches and opponents and whatnot. It's just a very strange thing. I can very much greatly remember everything when he comes back in 2003 than this period by far. We're starting out with some headlocks and some tackles and some push-ups. They're teasing the test of strength, and Austin's like, here's the deuce again, and Taker goes, fuck. The match begins with some good fundamentals, I gotta say. I love hearing Austin try and going, woo! Taker fights back with some clubbing blows. He hits the old school. He pulls Austin out of the ring, and now it's time to walk and talk, folks. They're going to be brawling on the outside for a great long time at this point, and Flair is just letting all this go. This goes on for quite some time, and boy, you would think after all these years, Austin would stop trying to give a pile driver to his opponent on the floor, because what do you know, he gets backdropped. Out come Scott Hall and X-Pac. They stroll their way down the ramp and stand there as our guys are still fighting on the outside for a while. The Undertaker working a methodical, aka slow pace against Austin. The fans are starting to get a little restless from the sound of things the longer this match goes on. There's an exposed turnbuckle, and that gets used briefly. Austin fights back, and he goes to whip the Undertaker, but Flair is in the path, so he collides, he's down, and I guess the referee shirt must give you this automatic debuff, because like Flair is a wrestler, former, 16-time world champion or everything, and he just turns to dust after that collision. He's down for a while as Austin hits the stunner. It's kind of amazing Flair's not bleeding from this. Taker with a low blow to Austin, the choke slam, Austin somehow kicks out. Taker grabs the chair, Flair yanks it from him, Austin gives Deadman a receipt, goes for another stunner, Flair takes another bump, Taker with the steel chair, he dinks Stone Cold with it, but Austin still kicks out. Steve dodging another chair attack, does some mud hole stomping, he gets the chair, Taker boots it into his face, Taker with a cover, Austin puts his foot on the ropes, Flair is looking right at the shit, makes the count anyway, Undertaker wins. He gets in Austin's face about it, Austin hits him with a stunner, Austin must drink, brother. Well, they don't make him like that anymore. I'm gonna give this 1 star out of 5. This was brutal. I mean, Undertaker and Austin, I don't think ever had like a great match between them, and this was just the worst out of all of them. I mean, they're both looking pretty run down at this point, and Flair being involved in it just added to it. I mean, God, how much do you have to protect Stone Cold Steve Austin to the point where it takes all that to beat him? And then he gets the final laugh at the end. He's standing tall to the guy who just beat him and who's going to be the champion in a month. I mean, that was absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, Scott Hall and X-Pac showed up and never did anything. They stood there, and that was it. They didn't interfere. They didn't do nothing. Why were they out there? I guess because in the next month or so, like, Flair is going to work with the NWO because he's turning heel against Austin. But I mean, that's not fairly obvious from that. That's not very good seed planting, I don't think. Because even when Flair kind of works with the NWO, it's not even a very strong relationship. It just seems more of a mercenary thing than anything else. So yeah, this whole match just stinks. And right after the match, Jonathan Coachman confronts Flair about the missed foot. He says he didn't see it. He shows him the footage. Flair looking upset, and he goes, "Ah, shit." Well, up next, I guess you could call this the come down match or the bathroom break or whatever, because it's just before the main event. It's for the WWF Tag Team titles as Billy and Chuck, with their stylist Rico, defend against Al Snow and Maven, the Tough Enough trainer and the Tough Enough champion, working together to fight the ambiguously gay duo. Nick Patrick's the referee, so you know you're probably going to get some bullshit. Al Snow is lured out to the middle of the apron. He gets knocked off and he's out of position to make a tag, so Maven takes some punishment for a bit. He gets a quick hot tag to Al. He's on a big run until he gets cut off. Snow takes the funniest bump on a neckbreaker I've ever seen. Whee! There's a Rico's gay chant by the crowd. Snow avoids Billy's stinger splash. We get an oral sex gag. Then Al gets the hot tag to Maven. Maven walks right into the Famouser. Did not see that coming, but Frosty James makes the save. Rico accidentally kicks his own man while the referee is distracted. The challengers look to have it won. Maven hits this big top rope cross body, but it's still not enough. Some chasing around and through the ring leads to Chuck super kicking Maven. Billy with the cover, and B and C win. Hey, I got the initials right that time. I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5. This match definitely felt like it was being chopped down for time, but I think they were able still to tell a pretty good story despite it being a rushed story. And then it's time for the main event. For the WWF Undisputed Championship, Hunter Hearst Helmsley defends against Hollywood Hulk Hogan, aka... So after the draft, Vince McMahon got to choose the first #1 contender to challenge for Triple H's belt, and he named Hulk Hogan due to the big rush of popularity and the big fan support that he's had as of late. Even though in the same breath where he announced Hogan, he said, "I don't make decisions based on public opinion," even though that is the rationale you gave for why Hogan's the #1 contender. He didn't even win his match at WrestleMania. Sit and watch as the young grow old. Oh man, I have to admit, I love this story. I think, again, the way they framed it, that hype package, the song by Creed from Forcible Entry, kind of accompanying it, that story of like the young lion and the older lion, I think it's a pretty good story. And, you know, the whole idea of Hogan, you know, what a feather in the cap it would be. What a great exclamation point on this miraculous comeback, this story of being supported and embraced by the fans again, for him to win the championship one more time. Can he do it? I actually like that a lot. And what a shot this is of Triple H doing his spit thing in the entrance, Hogan in the shadows in the background. Very cool framing here. And wait a minute, they haven't updated the title match graphic yet? They've had the new belt for a month now. And speaking of which, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, hey, my favorite belt of all time made its debut. After WrestleMania, Ric Flair awarded Triple H the official Undisputed Championship, and man, it just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy and nostalgic when I think about that belt. Looks the best on Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero, is all I'm going to say. So the posturing begins. Trips shoves Hogan off on a couple of lockups, gets booed for it. The fans are clearly on the side of Hogan in what is ostensibly a face versus face matchup. Hogan with the shove back, and he gets a big pop. We get this test of strength for a while, very deliberate pace in the match. Triple H slaps Hogan in the face, gets to stomping. The bandana is finally off, folks. Hogan fires back with some clotheslines. He backdrops H over the rope to the outside. Well, more specifically, he just kind of is bent over, and Triple H just does the work and jumps for him, and Hogan's barely part of it. Hogan, not the nimble man he was ever known to be in his younger days, and it does really show here. Like, Hogan is got some deficiencies at this point because of his age and his body being broken down, and Triple H, who is so huge and has gained so much mass in his big return from injury, he has also lost a bit of mobility. Hulk reverses a suplex to Hunter on the floor. We get some back and forth in the ring. Triple H with a chop block sends Hogan to the mat. He starts to work the leg. As the fans continue to boo Triple H, JR reminds everyone that, hey, Triple H isn't doing anything illegal, so I don't know why you're booing him, y'all. The H-Man locks in the figure 4, but Hogan reverses it. The sleeper holds applied. Hogan starts to fight out of it. Hits the axe bomber, the boot, the leg drop. Suddenly in comes Chris Jericho with a steel chair. That's why we saw him earlier. He pulls Earl Hebner out of the ring, dinks Hogan with the chair. He's seemingly trying to help Triple H, but the game is too cool for Chris's help. Now Hogan hems up. He hits the boot. He goes for the leg drop, but Triple H moves. He hits the pedigree, and wow, Hogan takes that move really well. Hebner's going for the count, but then the Undertaker runs in and just decks him. He dinks Triple H with the chair. He's trying to help Hogan now, but that won't work for him, brother. Just kidding. I'll take advantage of this. Thanks. Leg drop. Hogan wins. Hulk Hogan is the WWF champion for the first time in 9 years. It's the rebirth of Hulkamania, everybody. Triple H is bleeding. It's all under his eyes. Looks very scary. He looks pissed, but he shows the sportsmanship, and Hogan poses as we fade to black. I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5. The nostalgia is fun, and I think it's a cool moment for Hogan to have come back and regained the championship after all this time, like a 19-year gap between when he first won the belt and when he won it here, which is really cool to see. I think that was a really neat moment. However, that bell had to ring, and we had to see that match to get there. And, you know, Triple H and Hogan doesn't have the same kind of juice that Hogan and Rock did 1 month earlier. I think they had a much better combination of factors and circumstances. You know, people still liked Hogan in this matchup, but they wanted to see him win, and they were happy. I think the match had a lot of bullshit to kind of like cover up some of the, you know, the weaknesses that were present in this matchup. But I think, again, the moment was cool. The match, not that great. And again, as much as I understand why they made that pivot for Hogan to win, I do think they really cut the wind out of the sails of Triple H's return. I mean, that was a very heroic comeback for him, coming back from the big injury, the Royal Rumble, fighting at WrestleMania. Yes, the terribleness of that main event and that feud aside, it's still a very big story. And for him to lose it after just 1 month to really try and capitalize on the Hogan thing, it's noble. And I think the story was Triple H volunteered to do the job for Hogan in this one. And so, again, more power to him for that. But I just think, yeah, there was more meat on the bone for a Triple H return run where he could have had it for a little longer. Because, yeah, the title is going to be bopping around a lot for the rest of 2002. It really makes the previous 2 months feel like it was kind of for nothing. You know, again, yay for Hogan, but Triple H's story is really just kind of altered significantly by this. That said, my grade for Backlash 2002, the final WWF production, is a C+. It's really, you know, almost split in half, the number of good matches to bad matches on this show. Like Intercontinental title match, Cruiserweight title match, Edge versus Kurt, those are the 3 strongest matches, I would say. And then there's Brock Lesnar's debut match, which is very visually interesting. And then you've got the rest of the show. A lot of the undercard matches aren't as strong. Undertaker versus Austin, woof, that was not a great matchup. And then the main event, again, a fun outcome, a fun moment of Hogan winning the championship. But the match that we saw to get there wasn't that great. It wasn't really doing it for me. But oh, how things will change a month from here. 2 weeks from now in the Classic Reviews, I'm going to look at the end of Hogan's Undisputed Championship reign when he takes on The Undertaker at Judgment Day 2002. That's how we're going to wrap up Hulkamania this year on the channel. But what did you think of this show, and how about this review? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.